You know the sound, that small catch of wood against wood, every morning when you try to close the kitchen drawer. You push it, you shift something inside, blindly, with your fingers. You push again, it closes, barely, and you walk away, carrying a tiredness you cannot quite name. That tiredness is not about the drawer. It is about what the drawer holds. Years of things kept without asking why. Things that belong to a life you were living once, or a life you kept hoping would begin. There is a practice, quiet and old, called Danshari. It does not ask you to empty your home in a weekend. It asks you to remove one thing, one single thing, today, and then one tomorrow, with patience and with your own hands. That is what this video is about, and it begins with understanding what Danshari truly means. My name is Keiko Tanaka. I am 78 years old, and I have lived in the same small wooden house on the edge of Kanazawa for over 50 years. I kept far too much once. Every shelf was full. Every closet was pressed tight with things I had not touched in years. And it made me tired, though it took me a long, long time to understand that the tiredness and the fullness were connected. In my 50s, I began studying Danshari at a temple near my home, not as a weekend project, as a practice, the way one practices breathing or prayer. I have been letting go, slowly, one thing at a time, for more than 20 years now. I am not here to tell you to throw your things away. I would never say that. I am here to share what I learned, living on both sides, the full house and the quiet one, what it cost me to hold on, and what it felt like, finally, to set things down. So let me tell you what Danshari actually is, because the word itself holds the whole teaching. The word was coined in 2009 by an author named Hideko Yamashita. She drew it from two deep wells, Zen Buddhism and yogic philosophy, both of which teach that attachment is a source of suffering. But she shaped it into something you can practice at home with your own hands, starting with a single shelf. Danshari is 3 words pressed into one, and each word is a different kind of work. Dan means to refuse, to cut off. It is the practice of stopping new things from entering your home without thought. Before you bring something through the door, you pause. You ask whether this thing has a place in the life you are living now, not the life you imagine, the one you woke up in this morning. Dan is the gate. Shah means to dispose, to release what no longer serves your present life. The shoes you have not worn in 4 years, the stack of magazines you kept because one article felt important once. Shah is not cruel, it is honest. It asks you to look at what you have and admit, gently, that some of it belongs to a person you are no longer. Re is the deepest of the 3. It means to separate, to detach. Dan and Shah work with objects. Re works with you. It is the slow loosening of the grip your heart keeps on things, not because the things are precious, but because you have woven them into who you believe you are. Re takes the longest. I am still practicing it after 20 years. Now you may hear this and think it sounds like another tidying method, another way to fold your shirts or label your boxes. It is not. Organizing asks where to put things. Danshari asks why you kept them. That is an entirely different question. Picture a cluttered shelf. An organizing method would sort every item into neat rows and perhaps add a basket. Danshari would have you hold each item one at a time and ask whether it belongs in your life as it is today. Some would stay, some would leave, and the shelf at the end would not just be tidy, it would be true. That difference between a tidy shelf and a true one is where the real practice begins. and it begins with the things we find hardest to hold up to the light. There is a dress in your closet. You know the one. You have not worn it in 15 years, but every time your hand brushes past it, you feel that evening again. The restaurant, the laughter, the way the fabric felt when you stood up from the table. The dress does not fit the life you live now, but it fits the memory so perfectly that moving it feels like erasing the night itself. And then there are the other things, the tools you bought for a project that never began, the language books from the year you were going to learn French. These do not pull you backward into memory. They pull you forward into a life that has not arrived, and perhaps never will. Someday, you tell yourself, someday I will use these. Danshari has a quiet, firm answer for both. It asks one question. Does this thing serve the life you are living now, not the person you were 10 years ago? Not the person you hope to become next spring, the person who woke up in this house this morning and opened this drawer? That question sounds simple. It is not, because we store our identities inside our things. The dress says, I was someone who had beautiful evenings. The tools say, I am someone who will build something one day. Letting go of the object feels like letting go of that version of yourself, and the body resists it the way it resists any small grief. Yamashita understood this. Her method does not simply tell you to discard. It incorporates techniques similar to behavioral therapy, easing the fear that rises when your hands close around something you have kept for years. It is not a matter of willpower. It is a matter of practice, done gently, done slowly, until the fear loses its grip. I know this fear well. I kept my mother's sewing box for 30 years. Beautiful dark wood, good thread still wound on the spools. I had not sewn a single stitch in decades, but every time I touched the lid, I felt her hands. It took me a long time to understand that her hands were in mine already. They did not live in the box. They never had. That is the invisible labor. Guarding things you do not use. It does not look like work. There is no sweat, no aching back. But it sits in your chest, quiet and constant, the weight of 100 small promises you made to your past self and your future self, while your present life waits patiently in between. And that is why the practice begins not with your hands, but with an honest look at what you have been holding, and for whom. So now you understand why we hold on. Let me show you how to begin letting go. Start with one object, not a room, not a closet. One single thing. Walk to any shelf or drawer in your home and pick up the first item your eyes rest on. Hold it in your hands, feel its weight, look at it the way you would look at a guest who has stayed a very long time. Then ask it 3 questions. Is this necessary? Not useful in theory, not potentially handy someday, but necessary to the life I am living in this house, this week, with these hands. Is the quantity appropriate? You do not need 11 wooden spoons. You do not need 4 identical whisks. One good tool, used often, is worth more than a drawer full of duplicates pressing against each other in the dark. Is it pleasant to use or pleasant to look at? This is the question people forget. A bowl that feels rough in your hands, a vase you have never once filled with flowers, a blanket that scratches. These things take up space, not only on the shelf, but in the small moments of your day. Each time you reach past them for the thing you actually want. If the answer to any of these is no, that object leaves your home within 48 hours, not to a different shelf, not to a bag in the hallway that sits there for 6 months, becoming its own kind of clutter. Out of the house, into someone else's hands, or into a donation bin, within 2 days. That boundary matters. Without it, Letting go becomes rearranging, and rearranging changes nothing. And for the things that stay, there is one more rule. Everything you keep should be reachable and storable in a single motion. One hand, one movement. You lift the bowl from the shelf, you place it back. Nothing stacked behind something else, nothing wedged in so tightly you must pull 3 things out to reach the 4th. Picture a kitchen shelf where every bowl can be lifted out with one hand, where your fingers never have to search or shove or rearrange. That is what a shelf feels like when only the things that belong there remain. 1 object a day, that is all. It is small enough that the fear never builds. You are not emptying your house. You are asking one honest question of one quiet thing. And after a month, you have released 30 objects without a single overwhelming afternoon. No boxes dragged to the curb, no weekend of exhaustion and regret. Just 30 small, gentle decisions made one morning at a time. And those 30 small decisions begin to change something larger than the shelf. They change the way you walk through your own home. The first day is easy. You will be surprised how easy. You reach into a drawer and find a pen that has not written in months. You try it against the back of an envelope and nothing comes. You set it in a small bag by the door. Done. One object. You barely feel it leave. One. Day 2 is the same. A chipped mug at the back of the cupboard, the one you always reach past. You hold it for a moment, notice the crack along the rim, and let it go. 2 days, 2 objects, and the practice feels almost too gentle to matter. Then comes day 3, or perhaps day 4. Your hand finds something different, a scarf your sister gave you the winter she visited from Osaka. You have not worn it in years. The color does not suit you, and the wool has grown rough. But when you hold it, you do not feel wool. You feel her standing at your door with snow on her shoulders, laughing because she forgot to call ahead. The scarf is not a scarf anymore. It is a visit, and you are being asked to set the visit down. This is where the practice begins to teach you something. The guilt will come. It will sit in your chest like a stone, and it will say, "She chose this for you, and you are ungrateful." Let the guilt speak. Listen to it even, but you do not have to obey it. The love your sister carried through the snow is in you, not in the wool. It was never in the wool. By day 5, I cried. I want you to know that, because when it happens to you, and it may, I do not want you to think you are doing it wrong. I picked up a teacup, white porcelain with a thin blue line around the rim. My husband drank from it every morning for years. It had sat in the same spot on the shelf since he died, untouched, as though he might come back for it. I held it in both hands, and I wept. I did not let it go that day. I was not ready. I set it back, and I chose something else instead. The practice allows that. It does not punish slowness. By day 7, something shifts. It is not dramatic. You do not stand in your kitchen feeling reborn. It is quieter than that. You open a drawer, and it closes on the first try. You reach for a towel, and your hand finds it without searching. A single shelf has a few inches of empty space at one end, and the light from the window reaches the wood beneath. You notice not what is gone, but what remains, and what remains has room to breathe. That is the first week, and it is enough to show you what a month might feel like. 30 things gone. You would not notice them if I named them. A pen, a mug, a scarf, a cracked plate, a pair of shoes you could not quite walk in anymore. Small things, quiet things, things that left one at a time over 30 mornings. No boxes carried to the curb, no empty rooms staring back at you. Just 30 gentle decisions, and yet the room feels different. You may not understand it at first. You walk into your kitchen, and something has changed, but you cannot say what. Then you realize the counter has a surface, not the whole counter, just a stretch of it near the window, where the wood is bare and the morning light falls across it in a way you had forgotten it could. You did not clear that space in one dramatic sweep. It appeared inch by inch, decision by decision, the way a path appears through snow when someone walks it patiently every day. And the one-step rule begins to settle into your hands like habit. You reach for a towel, and it is simply there. Your fingers do not search behind a stack of others. You open a cupboard, and the bowl you need is at the front, waiting for you, not buried behind 3 you never use. Your kitchen begins to feel as though it was arranged by someone who knows you, because it was. You arranged it, one honest question at a time. Something else happens around this point, something I did not expect. You start noticing what you bring in. You stand in a shop holding a small dish, a pretty thing, pale blue, and you think of where it would go on the shelf, and for the first time you feel the cost, not the price, the cost. You feel the space it would take, the thing you would have to push aside, the small concession your home would make to hold it, and you set it down. Then the refusing begins without effort, because your hands have learned what enough feels like. The decisions grow lighter too, not because the objects matter less, but because you have practiced the asking, is this for the life I am living now? You have asked it 30 times, and each time the answer came a little faster, a little clearer. The muscle is stronger, the fear is quieter. After my first full month, I stood in my kitchen and looked around. I had not lost a single thing I needed, not one. Everything I reached for was still there. What was gone were only the things I had been guarding, quietly, faithfully, for years, without ever once being asked to. And that is when I understood that Danshari does not take things from you. It returns something to you, something you did not know you had given away. But the practice does not stop at shelves and drawers. There is a deeper layer, one that Yamashita placed at the very heart of the word, and it asks you to look not at what you own, but at who you believe you are, because you own it. Dan and Shah are about your hands. They ask you to pick something up, hold it honestly, and let it leave if it no longer belongs. You can feel that work in your fingers, in the weight of the object, in the quiet click of a drawer that finally closes. It is physical. It is real. You can point to the empty space on the shelf and say, there, that is what I did today. Re is different. Re does not ask about the object. Re asks about you. It is the third and deepest part of the word, and it means to separate, to detach. Not from the thing itself, but from the part of yourself you have stitched to it. The identity you built, thread by thread, around what you own. This is where Danshari parts company with every tidying method you have ever tried. Tidying rearranges your home, rearranges your understanding of why the home looked the way it did. Danshari is rooted in Zen Buddhism and yogic philosophy, and both teach the same quiet truth. Attachment is a source of suffering, not love. Attachment, the grip, not the feeling. Release is not loss. It is a return to clarity, the way setting down a heavy bag does not erase the journey, it simply frees your hands. I knew a woman years ago who kept 2 cardboard boxes of her children's baby clothes in the top of her wardrobe. Tiny cotton shirts, a knitted hat no bigger than her fist, soft shoes that had never touched pavement. Her children were grown, with children of their own. She had not opened those boxes in 20 years, but she could not let them go, because somewhere in her heart she believed the love lived inside the fabric, that if the boxes left, the babies left too. When she finally opened them, the clothes smelled of dust and old paper. She held the knitted hat for a long time, and then she understood. The love was in her hands. It had always been in her hands. The box was only cardboard. That is It is not a destination you arrive at one afternoon. It is a practice you return to, the way you return to breathing. You do not master breathing. You simply keep doing it, and some breaths are easier than others. Moment. After 20 years, I still find something to release, smaller things now. A photograph I kept from obligation, not affection. A teapot I held onto because it was expensive, not because it brought me peace. The objects grow quieter, but the practice itself remains, and I think now that the practice is the point, not the empty shelf, the willingness to ask, again and again, what am I holding, and is it mine to carry? That willingness is what changes a person, and it is what begins to change the way you let things leave your home, not with guilt, but with something closer to gratitude. There is a word in Japanese that I grew up hearing before I ever heard the word Danshari, motenai. It has no clean translation in English, but you feel it in the body the way you feel a wince. It is the quiet sorrow of waste, the pang you feel when good rice is scraped into the bin, or when a child outgrows a coat that still has years of warmth left in it. Motenai is not guilt, exactly. It is closer to respect, a recognition that something was made by someone from something, and to waste it is to dishonor that chain of effort. And so when I tell you to let one thing go each day, I hear the objection before you speak it. Is that not wasteful? Is that not the very thing Matenai warns against? It is not, and I want to explain why. Because these two ideas are not opposed. They are partners. Letting go does not mean the rubbish bin. It means finding the right next home for a thing, a neighbor, a donation center, a younger cousin who has just moved into her first apartment and does not yet own a soup pot. The object leaves your hands, but it does not leave the world. It moves from a place where it sat unused to a place where it is needed, and that movement is not waste, it is the opposite of waste. It is Matenai fulfilled. The real waste, the one that Matenai truly mourns, is a thing imprisoned, a coat that hung in my hallway closet for 6 winters, unworn, good wool, a deep green, well-made. I kept it because discarding it felt careless, but keeping it was not care either. It was neglect dressed as devotion. One November I gave it to my neighbor, a woman who walks to the market every morning in the cold. She wore it that same week, every day. I saw her from my window, the green collar turned up against the wind, and I understood. The coat had been waiting all those years, not for me to wear it, but for me to let it go. You honored that object by choosing it once. You honor it again by letting someone else choose it now. That is not loss, that is completion. And when something cannot be passed along, when it is truly worn through, you can still hold it for a moment and thank it quietly for what it gave. That is not foolishness. That is Matenai made tender. That is a life lived with open hands. And that openness, that willingness to release with care rather than cling from fear, is what begins to shape not just your shelves, but the kind of home you are quietly building, one empty space at a time. I would like to ask you something, and I mean it gently. If you walk through your home right now, slowly, with honest eyes, what is the one thing you already know does not belong? You do not have to think about it. You already know. It has been waiting for you to be ready. Next week, I want to talk about what happens when 2 people share a home, and only one of them is ready to let go. It is the natural next step after today. But for now, this is all I am asking of you. One thing, each day, held in your hands. Honestly asked whether it serves the life you are living now. Enough is its own kind of wealth, and a quiet home is a quiet mind. The people who understood this long before us did not read it in a book. They lived it, one open hand at a time.